Hello and welcome to this special edition of the PoliticsJOE Pubcast. It's going to be brief. It's just me and Ava, but we are doing it because the unnamed BBC presenter of this week has been named. It's Huw Edwards. I'm joined by Ava Santina. Ava, hello.
Good morning.
Glad to have you with us. And yeah, it is a good morning. I mean, you've been pretty busy already, haven't you?
Yeah. The way that we've opened this is sort of like, do you know, like two disgraced presenters are like about to do an apology video or something like that.
Yeah.
It feels like that.
The YouTube title is like, "We Need to Talk." And then it's like a thumbnail of the vlogger and maybe her husband sort of either crying or looking deeply embarrassed and ashamed.
And a ukulele.
Yeah. What would I, at risk of derailing before we do this really serious conversation, what do you think, like, in the future, if, you know, let's say you transition to being a vlogger, which I think you probably will, you know, like big lifestyle influencer, like commanding the political discourse just from your living room, smashing it.
You mean I'll never get hired again?
No, I think by choice. No, obviously people want to hire you. I mean, and actually, I know...
You'll be stuck in your living room.
Bastani says this all the time about his Navarra colleagues, like, how has no one poached you guys yet? And I feel very similar about sort of you and Ed. It boggles my mind sometimes. I think you guys are really good at what you do, and I don't understand why the people haven't got you yet. But
well, we like it here, Ollie.
What I was implying was that by choice you would become an influencer, vlogger type person, content creator, and I wanted to offer the question of what you think it would be that got you possibly, like, you know, your scandal, your apology video. What would it have to be?
When people find out I'm the one writing the caption on the PoliticsJOE Instagram.
It was her all along.
Yeah.
It was her all along. Yeah, I think I'm most likely to probably sort of disgrace myself in a pub or a nightclub in some way.
Really?
Yeah, being just like an absolute hot mess, you know. So
that made me think of that former Labour MP. Do you remember? Who used to always be found round infernos.
Yeah, okay, not like
off
that.
His nuts.
Not like that. It's just quite often, you know,
chemsex.
We might, yeah. So it wouldn't be chemsex. I think we might cut this because it's very self-aggrandizing. But sometimes people ask to have photos taken with me, but that only really happens in the queue to get into a nightclub when everyone's like properly like mash up or, you know, whatever. And they're, you know, I think most of the time people just want to talk about politics, and then if they're like battered, they're like, oh, let's have a photo. So there's like a series of photographs of me queuing up to, for example, a recent one to get into Phonox, and like the lad was too spangled to actually get in.
Nice.
Like he was gone, and so there's like a small library of like really like shaky, blurry photos of me with people that are absolutely fucked, being like, hi, and I think those photos could possibly derail me, but maybe we won't use.
You're allowed to drink.
Yeah.
You're allowed to, you know,
you're allowed to have a good time.
Be in the queue for a nightclub.
You are, and what a nightclub Phonox is. Anyway,
this is really.
We sort of got a bit self-involved.
I told you about that guy who used to fancy me at uni.
Yeah.
I'm outing him right now.
Okay.
Who texted me the other day to say that we sound very self-aggrandizing or self-centered or something like that.
I mean, I think we are, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's
very rude and noted.
The show is the three of us just chatting shit about British politics, so I think by its very nature it is quite self-aggrandizing because it is just what we think about things.
And this is how you lot all sound in the pub.
Yeah, indeed. Let's talk Huw Edwards then. Let's just get straight into it. Last night he was named by his wife in a statement, and there were two events last night that I thought were really, really significant in the story. That was the first one, and the second one was the Met Police coming out and saying that they would not, in their view, on the strength of the evidence so far, that a crime had not been committed and they were not going to be investigating any further. I'll read the statement from his wife Vicky in a second. I just want to also caveat everything that we talk about here, despite the fact that we, on a couple of the more recent episodes, you know, we were saying we've heard a name over and over again, and it was Huw Edwards was the name that we were hearing. But beyond that, I don't have any kind of special insight or knowledge about this story. I don't know about the strength of the Sun's evidence. I don't know about what Huw hasn't done. We're talking just about what is sort of in the public domain. And there's been a lot of conjecture and a lot of sort of speculating about this. And I think we'll try to have a conversation that's both sensitive of the issue, but also doesn't sort of go beyond the realms of what we know. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that guidance for me mostly?
putting a disclaimer on it, but actually it's just a warning for you.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. All right, so this is the statement, right, from Vicky. Again, I'm using her first name. I don't know her. In light of the recent reporting regarding the, quote, BBC presenter, I'm making this statement on behalf of my husband, Huw Edwards, after what has been 5 extremely difficult days for our family. I'm doing this primarily out of concern for his mental well-being and to protect our children. Huw is suffering from serious mental health issues. As is well documented, he has been treated for severe depression in recent years. The events of the last few days have greatly worsened matters. He suffered another serious episode and is now receiving inpatient hospital care where he'll stay for the foreseeable future. And then, because I'm reading this off the Daily Mail, I have to scroll past all of these adverts. Once well enough to do so, he intends to respond to the stories that have been published. To be clear, he was first told there were allegations being made against him last Thursday. In the circumstances and given Huw's condition, I would like to ask that the privacy of my family and everyone else caught up in these upsetting events is respected. I know that Huw is deeply sorry that so many colleagues have been impacted by the recent media speculation. We hope this statement will bring that to an end. There ends the statement. Okay, let's just start last night, Ava. When his name came out, what were your sort of initial thoughts on the story and reaction?
Who it was never shocked me, right? Because that was that was in the gossip mill for over nearly a week now.
Yeah.
It's been non-stop. What shocked me was that he was in hospital, was that his wife revealed who it was, and that the Sun reneged on their original story and have said that they never... I should get the proper statement up, but they basically said that they never actually said it was child photos.
While you're pulling that up, I think what's remarkable here is that we've almost... Basically what's happened is the sort of the matters of 2 families, the first being the young person at the centre of the story, their family, and then Huw Edwards' family, and basically their trouble, trauma, feud is playing out in the national media. The young person's family, it basically seems like they're feuding, and the parents have used the Sun to pursue that feud, and then the young person has used their lawyers and the BBC to put their side of the case forward. And then and I think we'll talk about this a bit more in a minute, if, as the Met says, there's no evidence of criminality taking place, then what's going on there with Huw is a matter for his family. It's not a matter, I don't think, and other people see that judgment differently. Public interest, and versus what interests the public are 2 different things. But if Huw Edwards has paid money in return for sexually explicit photos of someone who is of age, that's not criminal. His wife might have a problem with it, and that's for them.
Middle England might have a problem with it.
Yeah, but again, they might have a problem with it, but why does it concern them?
Yeah.
If it's like if we were to...
I agree, pal. I'm on your side.
Yeah, I know. But if we extrapolate out and just pick some random person, I won't name anyone for the sake of, yes.
Ed Campbell.
Yeah, okay, right. So let's say Ed Campbell is a prolific OnlyFans user, and in 20 years' time, he's married, and his wife doesn't know, perhaps, that he's using OnlyFans and spending a lot of the household income on it. That would be a problem for them in their marriage. Yeah. Would it be a problem that deserved the front page of The Sun? I don't think it would be. But anyway, you've pulled up that statement from The Sun now, so you can drop that.
It's a very clever statement.
Okay.
So The Sun said that they would cooperate with the BBC, and that there were a dossier containing wide-ranging allegations, which they've received, and they will pass on what they can, and there's no plans to publish further allegations. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The spokesman added, "We must also re-emphasise that The Sun at no point in our original story alleged criminality, and also took the decision neither to name Mr. Edwards nor the young person involved in the allegations. Suggestions about possible criminality were first made at a later date by other media outlets, including the BBC." Now, this is actually where it gets really interesting, because I That's correct. In their original story, they didn't. But then what was going on online? Because online, they were implying criminality. Very careful with the language here, aren't we?
Yeah.
So I'll just read you this one headline on The Sun. This was on The Sun's website on Sunday, 9th of July. BBC sex probe. Top BBC star who paid child for sex pictures could be charged by cops and face years in prison, experts say. I'll then draw you to another one. Top BBC star taken off air after paying teenager for sexual pictures. Now, this one in the Daily Mail. Stripped half naked, the BBC man was on his sofa waiting for my child to perform. Mother of youth paid 35k for sex pics by famous host tells of shock at seeing lewd image of star as man could face police probe over crimes carrying 14-year sentence. Now, that is implying criminality. No doubt.
Yeah.
Correct to say it might not have been in the original printed publication. That is. And half the country, whether you implied or did not imply, did think for a time there that this BBC presenter was a nonce. And that's abominable.
Yeah, I think you're now sort of left evidentially. Do you believe the son and the parents of the young person involved? They're sort of like one actor in this. Then do you believe the young person who, identity we don't know, speaks through their lawyers, gave a statement to the BBC? And then thirdly, the third party is the Met Police. Now, we touched on this with Charlotte yesterday, which is, you know, when the charge rate and conviction rate, particularly in the most egregious case, in the case of rape, is so low, can you trust the police, you know, as a sort of signifier of what is true, what is correct, and you know, the criminal justice system more broadly? I agree that their performance is woeful, but in lieu of any other sort of arbiter of truth, i.e., like the court system, we don't really have another alternative. And if the police are saying that they're not pursuing, you know, criminal charges in this case, that for me is a very clear indicator. Because I stand by what I said yesterday. If the Met Police thought that someone was in possession of indecent images of a minor, or, you know, not necessarily a minor, but someone who was over 16 but below 18, they would not hang around. They would not hang around in pursuing that case. Especially not now, after lessons have been learned with previous, you know, instances of this. No, exactly. And then I think if you look at, okay, well, let's look at one of the other key parties. Then let's talk about the Sun. And I actually think I was perhaps a little bit guilty when it first came out of just taking their journalism at face value. Go and ask the people of Merseyside. Go to Liverpool and ask people about the Sun newspaper. They'll tell you to not trust a word it says. They'll tell you it's a rag, and they'll tell you not to buy it. As will lots of other people. Let's not forget, very recent, within living memory, in the 80s, the Sun, and this was before the Sexual Offences Act 2003 passed, which is where, you know, we were talking about the discrepancy between 16 to consent to sex, 18 to sort of appear in sexual images. That's the piece of legislation that changed that, 2003. But before that, in the 80s, the Sun, on page 3, printed topless photos of a woman called Samantha Fox. She was 16 years old. Tits out. Fully tits out. Fine with it then. And I know society's changed. The law has changed. What they did then wasn't illegal. But to then be kind of, you know... the morality police. Yeah, well, exactly. You know, page 3 was running for a long time. And to be clear, you know, obviously... not illegal, particularly in the most recent cases, but, you know, page 3 ran for a long time. They were very happy to financially benefit from women's bodies. You know, so and they still do to some extent. Well, yeah, most tabloids do. Yeah, I mean, there's still, like, you know, plenty of like celebs in bikinis and all that kind of stuff floating around. Now, see, where I think this story then develops is how quickly the commentariat was to jump onto it. So
Patrick Christie's, I think we might have brought this up the other day on GB News, said that parliamentary privilege should be used to name this person. Lee Anderson, the deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, said that the BBC was full of perverts. Now, what is that? Mm-hmm. Everything was alleged. You didn't know who the person was in writing, and you didn't know what acts they were. Imagine if someone had gone into the Commons and named him as a pervert.
Yeah. Be horrific. And I think you can't. I think you have to understand those conversations around it in the context, in the political context, and also the societal context. There are myriad people, particularly in the press, the right wingers, therefore, i.e., the newspapers, who are like ideologically opposed to the existence of the BBC. Some of that is for political reasons. They don't think that there should be, a state-funded broadcaster, and that's a valid political position to have. It's one I disagree with, but it's an argument you can have. And then there's the more pragmatic, nakedly practical opposition to it, which is that they can't compete with the BBC, with an ad-funded business. Rachel Johnson recently revealed that in a meeting with Rupert Murdoch at Chequers, Boris Johnson was told by Rupert Murdoch, as Rupert Murdoch bounced Wilfred on his knee, that Boris had to kill the BBC. You need to get rid of it. We can't compete with it. There are actors in our society who have absolutely no bones about capitalising on a story like this to try to undermine the BBC because it suits their political ends. Then the second part, the societal context around it is, and to be absolutely clear, in no way equating, for example, this instance we're talking about with previous instances, which I'm about to mention. They are not the same thing. Philip Schofield's case, that's happened very recently. And then, again, these are not the same thing. But before that, Jimmy Savile. And the long shadow of that hangs over not just the BBC, but the British media and the British entertainment establishment. It casts a very, very long shadow. And as a result of that, you can sort of see where the moral panic comes from around this story. One final thing, and I'm aware I've been talking for a very long time, so I will let you speak, but I just want to say this as well. So we don't know the gender of the person involved, but there is a broader sort of societal moral panic about older men, in the case of Huw Edwards, sexually taking advantage of other people in society. And I think some of it, particularly in Schofield's case, is filled with latent homophobia. It is identifying gay people as sexual predators, as well as, we can talk about the broader context of transphobia and this kind of moral panic about young people having sex. So yes, that's sort of my piece, and I'm aware that I've spoken for a really long time.
No, it's really interesting. That's actually what the Tory MP I was speaking to last night was saying. He was quite up in arms about it. He was talking about latent homophobia, and that being pretty pervasive in the country.
Yeah.
People online talking about the breaking up of a marriage as if that somehow equates to paedophilia is obscene.
Yeah.
And insane.
Yeah.
But as well what's quite extraordinary, you actually just did if we did a timeline about all of the events that have happened over the past few days, to the point of him nearly being named and outed on GB News, and there was no evidence for that person did not know it was him. It was just a rumour.
Yeah.
You think about how other presenters, MPs, wanted to hang this man publicly, in the court of public opinion. And to, based on what? You're all one bad political opinion from being publicly shamed.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty undignified as well, seeing presenters who will remain nameless sort of publicly encouraging the Huw, we now know it's Huw, to come forward and name themselves because they were being accused or questioned.
I disagree with you there.
Okay, go on.
I think that came out of a panic. I think there are a few of them that were being really badly tormented online. And I think you're only human at the end of the day. If that was a company that came out and said, you're putting us into disrepute, name yourself, fine. But if you're just yourself and you're being called a nonce online, you just want it to stop. And perhaps you don't act in the most rational way possible. If I was getting those sort of accusations levied at me, I would not be calmly saying, let's just wait until it's time.
I don't agree. I think that the person, I don't want to minimise the kind of the traumatic nature of what you've just described, because obviously that's horrific. I don't think it's as troubling, difficult as what Huw would have been going through. Well, particularly in that statement, it sounds like he's been in hospital for quite some time. Would have been going through, and my view on that would probably be that as a friend or a colleague of someone, it's not I wouldn't want to be putting additional pressure on that person. I would be sort of, I'd like to think, and obviously I might not be able to if everyone was telling me that I was a nonce, to sort of be like, well, okay, I'm going to stomach this for a while because my mate has got far more on his plate and he doesn't need me sticking my oar in and telling him to do X, Y, or Z.
You're a better man than I.
Okay. Should we leave it there? Anything else you'd like to say?
We've all stopped talking about that email, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Yeah. We'll stop talking about that email. Stop talking about Boris Johnson and the COVID inquiry.
Yeah, and the strikes that are going on today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like, when everyone starts going like, oh, it's a dead cat, they want you to talk about it. It's like, it's not, you're an idiot. Like, what do you think? You think Rishi Sunak is in control of this story? You think like...
Yes.
But yeah, it is. I mean, it's just kind of, I think actually you're right. Without wanting to, we said it, this conversation wouldn't take this long, but it's also a jumping off point into a conversation about who we are as a society, that a story like this engrosses us and absorbs us far more than any of the actual quite naked political scandal that is running right now in the country.
Yeah. 1 million people today, £500 extra they're going to pay a month on their mortgages. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
OnlyFans.
And we've just done 20 minutes talking about it. Very good. Cool.
Yeah, but from our moral high ground.
Exactly.
Our high horse.
Our self-aggrandizing
if you enjoyed the horse.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, drop a comment, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers, guys.